Hello and welcome to Homework Walkthrough Video 2.02a Independent Practice for 7th grade math. Let's jump right in. Question 1. Evaluate. Oh, it looks like this question is about adding and subtracting fractions. Adding and subtracting fractions. Now, how I would love to solve this question is to turn all of these fractions into decimals and then add and subtract the decimals. Oh, that would be so nice. We can turn 5/8 into a decimal. Super easy. 5/8 can be a decimal super easy by doing 5 divided by 8. Or, yes, negative 5/8 would be negative 6.25. Or negative 5/2 would be negative 2.5. But 1/3 is a repeating decimal. Darn it. So that's going to be really hard to add these fractions together if we turn them into decimals. You can, but you're maybe more likely to get the answer wrong if you do that. So I'm going to show how to solve this question while keeping all these numbers in fraction form. In order to add and subtract fractions, they all have to have the same denominator. They have to have the same denominator. And we can get these fractions to have the same denominator by multiplying the top and the bottom of the fractions by the same thing. So, now instead of finding a least common multiple for each fraction, a pro-strat for finding the least a common multiple, a common bottom number, is to multiply one fraction by the other fraction's denominator. See, like here I go times this by 2 and times this by 2, and over here I times this by 8 and times this by 8. So that way these two fractions will have the same bottom numbers. So we have negative 10, 5 times 2 is 10, on top of 8 times 2 is 16. 5 divided by 8, 10 divided by 16, get the same thing, just now they're bigger numbers. Minus negative 5 times 8 is 40, and 8 times 2 is 16 again. So now these fractions can be added and subtracted, but we have one more fraction. So let's do that same strategy by multiplying one fraction by the other fraction's denominator. So that way they all have the same bottom numbers. Multiply this by 3 and this by 3. Multiply this by 3, this by 3, and then multiply this by 16. Multiply this by 16. Then I'll move up here, move my work up here. So now we'll have negative 10 times 3 is 30, on top of 16 times 3 is 48, because 15 times 3 is 45, so yep, 48, minus negative 40 times 3 is 120. 16 times 3, again, is still 48, plus 1 times 16 is 16, on top of 3 times 16 is 48. Now that all the bottom numbers are the same, we can add and subtract them. You can add and subtract fractions once all the bottom numbers are the same. Now, our final answer is going to be something on top of 48. When we're adding and subtracting fractions, the bottom number doesn't change, only the top number. So another way to think about this that doesn't make our brains explode, a way we could type this in our calculator is negative 30 minus negative 120 plus 16. We can use a calculator for this question, but we have to know what to type in our calculator. Negative 30, negative 30 minus negative 120 plus 16, 106. 106. Positive 106. Right? Yep, positive 106. So our final answer is 106 on top of 48. If I wanted to type and like get a decimal as my final answer, I could do negative 5 eighths minus negative 5 halves plus 1/3. But I would have to type in 2.2083 with a repeating decimal bar over just the 3. And if you don't do that, answer's not correct. Or you could write it in fraction form. Either way works. I'm going to write this in fraction form, 106 on top of 48. Oh yeah. Question 2. Evaluate the expression. Oh, looks like we're just adding and subtracting. We have 2 decimals, 1 fraction. Let's see if we can turn this fraction into a decimal easily. If we can easily turn this fraction into a decimal, or it makes a nice decimal and not a crazy decimal, not a repeating one, then I think we got ourselves a manageable problem. So let's turn 41/5 into a decimal. We can turn any fraction into a decimal by doing top number divided by bottom number, or 41 divided by 5. Let's see what our calculator says 41 divided by 5 is. 41 divided by 5, 8.2. So another way to write this expression is 4.75 minus 8.2 plus 1.26. Let's see what our Florida-approved calculator has to say. 4.75 minus 8.2 plus 1.26. Our answer is negative 2.19. And that makes sense. That's an answer that makes sense because I have 4 positives, almost 5. I have 1 positive here, so that's like almost 6 positives, but I have 8 negatives. So I get almost 5, I get a little more than 1, but then I lose 8, so that means I will have lost more than I got. So my answer will be negative, will be about 2 negative. So that answer makes sense. That answer is reasonable. Negative 2.19 is our answer. Negative, push the minus button, 2.19. Oh, oops. And check. Yay! Question 3. Looks like for this question, we have not adding and subtracting fractions, but timesing and dividing fractions. Oh, timesing and dividing fractions have different rules than multiplying, or timesing and dividing have different rules than adding and subtracting fractions. So we don't, I think it would be easier to not turn these into decimals at all. Just keep them fractions. Multiplying and dividing fractions is so easy. So I'm going to show how to solve this by multiplying and dividing them as fractions, keeping them in fraction form. let's start with this up here. 4/5 times -7/3. When we are multiplying with fractions, we multiply straight across, meaning we multiply the numerators by the numerators to get the new numerator, and we multiply the denominators by the denominators to get the new denominator. Now, this answer we get, this fraction, is it going to be a positive fraction or a negative fraction? Well, if there's one negative sign in the question, that means our answer is negative. If there's two negatives in the question, our answer will be positive. We learned that in a previous homework. Looks like we have one negative sign in the question, so our final answer will be negative. So now let's multiply the numerators together. What's 4 times 7? Yeah, it's 28. What's 5 times 3? Bottom number times bottom number to get the new bottom number. Yep, it is 15. So now, let me smudge this out. And let's write our new fraction here. Notice how we are going one step at a time. -28 on top of 15. So now we have the question, -28 15ths divided by -1 9th. When we divide, we can divide fractions by using the rule keep, change, flip to turn this dividing fractions question into a multiplying fractions question. So we keep the first fraction exactly how it is. Then we change the divide sign to a multiply sign. Then we flip the last fraction, 9 on top of 1. And now we have a multiplying fractions, just like we did up here. When we multiply fractions, we multiply all the numerators together to get the new numerator, and we multiply all the denominators together to get the new denominator. Now, before we do that, will our final answer, will it be a positive fraction or a negative fraction? If there's one negative in the multiplication question, our answer will be negative. But if there's two negatives in the question, our answer will be positive. Yep, there's two negatives in our question, so our answer will be positive. So now let's multiply the two numerators together to get the new numerator. What is 28 times 9? 28 times 9, 252. 252 on top of what's 15 times 1? Yep, that's 15. So this is our final answer, positive 252 15ths. We could have also typed this in our calculator if we were very careful and did, let's see, 4 on top of 5 times negative, let me put parentheses around this too, -7/3 parentheses, click and drag, make a new fraction, then do typing it in exactly how I see it. 1 on top of 9. Final answer is 16.8 is what the calculator says. Here it was 16.8. But doing it by keeping them in fraction form, we had 252 15ths. Let's see what that is as a normal number. Oops. 16.8. So same answer, fraction form, normal number form. You could do this question by just typing it in your calculator, but so easy to type this in wrong. I think so easy to type it in wrong. And always good to know why your calculator is saying what it is saying. So I will type in this to my answer box, 252/15. 252. Oops. Fraction button, 252/15. But you could have also typed it in 16.8, or type in the decimal form. Correct. Question 4. Halfway done. Evaluate the expression. Oh, looks like here we got some timesing, some adding, subtracting, and some dividing. So now we are going to use PEMDAS to help us. P-E-M-D-A-S. These are the orders of operation. PEMDAS means parentheses. E, or P means parentheses. E means exponents. M means multiply. D means divide. A means add. And S means subtract. This is the order that we should do our math. This tells us what to do first. Do you see any parentheses in this question? That is the first step. You do see parentheses? So do I. Since there are parentheses in this question, we can kind of ignore the rest of it for now and solve the parentheses part first. So let's do that. Negative 8.5 minus 3.36. Let's use our calculator to help us with that. Negative 8.5 minus 3.36. And that is negative 11.86. So let's smudge out this parenthesis part. And write our new number there. Negative 11.6. Okay, now we are on, so we don't see any more parentheses or any more operations inside parentheses, right? We do still have parentheses, but there's no operations inside the parentheses, like there's no minusing, plusing, timesing, or dividing inside the parentheses. It's just a number. And when you have a number next to parentheses, or a number next to a number inside parentheses, that means multiply. So that is just another way to write multiply. Do you see any exponents? No. So we're done with parentheses, we're done with exponents. Now it is either multiplying or dividing, whichever comes first. The third step in order of operations is to do the multiply or the divide, whichever one comes first. Looks like division comes before the multiply, so let's take care of this division part, and then we'll take care of this, and we'll solve the multiply part. Here we have 36/5 divided by -6. Ooh, this fraction is making my stomach sick. So let's turn this fraction into a decimal. We can turn any fraction into a decimal by doing top number divided by bottom number, or 36 divided by 5. 36 divided by 5 is 7.2. 7.2. So let's smudge out that fraction and write 7.2. Now, this is much easier to type in our calculator. Oops, wrong calculator. 7.2 divided by -6 is -1.2. So let's smudge out this part of our expression and write -1.2 there. Smudge this out, not the plus sign though. Black, negative 1.2. And so we did the division, no more division. And now let's multiply. 14.3 times negative 11.6. Calculator, help us out, please. 14.3 times negative 11.6 is negative 165.88. So let's smudge out what we just solved for. Smudge out the 14.3 times negative 11.6. Don't need that anymore. And now let's write our new number that we got. Negative 165.88. Then we can add. Now we only have adding left. So we finished the multiply. We don't see any subtraction. We just see adding. Negative 1.2 plus negative 165.88 is negative 167.8. Negative 167.08. Our final answer. Negative 167.08. Check. Yay! No! All right, so after doing this problem again, I had to start all the way over because I don't know where I made the mistake. And after typing it all into my calculator, all from the beginning, I see that my answer I got the first time was so close to the answer I got the second time. So now I'm going to try this as my answer. I was just 3 away. Darn it. But somewhere I made a mistake. And for these problems, if you make a mistake, the only way to fix it is to start all the way over and try again more slowly. More slowly. So let's type in this new answer, negative 170.798. Negative 170.798. Check. Correct. And yes, you could type this question into the state-approved online calculator, but you still need to know how order of operations works in order to type it in, so that way you get the correct answer. Question 4. Looks like we have some adding, some dividing, and some multiplying in this question, so we are going to need PEMDAS to help us. PEMDAS is an acronym to help us remember the order of operations, or the order in which to do our math, because we see a lot of math. Dividing, timesing, minusing, plusing, parentheses. PEMDAS stands for parentheses. So we will do any operations inside parentheses first, then exponents, multiply or divide, add or subtract. Do you see any parentheses or any operations inside parentheses? You do? Nice. So do I. Right here. I see a minus sign inside the parentheses. Since this minusing question is inside parentheses, let's do this first with our calculator. 2.7 minus 4.4 is negative 1.7. So let's smudge out this, keeping the parentheses though, and write negative 1.7. Negative 1.7. When we have a number right next to a number inside parentheses, that means multiply. So this means multiply. Okay, so we did the parentheses. There's no more operations inside parentheses. We don't see any exponents, but I do see, and I don't see any dividing, but I do see multiplying 4 times negative 1.7. So let's see what that is. 4 times negative 1.7. Oops. 0.7. Negative 6.8. Negative 6.8. So let's smudge this out. We just multiplied. And our new number is negative 6.8. So now all we have is a plus sign. So we finished the multiply, we don't have subtracting. All we have left to do is add. But one of our numbers is a fraction. Blech. Lucky for us, we can turn any fraction into a decimal, into a normal looking number, by doing top number divided by bottom number. Let's use our calculator to see what top number divided by bottom number is. Negative 717 divided by 100 is negative 7.17. So let's smudge out there, and let's write our new number. So it was negative 7.17, negative 7.17. And now let's add these numbers together. Negative 7.17 plus negative 6.8 is negative 13.97. Negative 13.97. Our final answer, negative 13.97. Check. Yes, we got it correct. Question 6. Ooh, looks like in this question we have some adding, some dividing. Well, we got a lot, don't we? Got a lot. Okay. So, to do this question, we need to know our order of operations, the order that we will do the operations for this question. Operations are like multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting, or exponents. And every math question has the same order. For every math question, you do operations inside parentheses first, then you solve for exponents, then you solve for multiplying or dividing, whichever comes first, and then you solve for adding or subtracting. Here, I don't see any parentheses. I also don't see any exponents. Now, even though there's no parentheses, since this question is like in a fraction, all the stuff on top of the fraction gets solved for first. It's kind of like there's parentheses here. Kind of like. So, do you see any multiplying up here? You do? So do I. Right there. Multiplying. 89 tenths times negative 3.16. I see that too. Ugh, 89 tenths a fraction? No. Let's turn that fraction into a decimal by doing the top number divided by the bottom number. 89 divided by 10. And if we used our calculator, we would see that it gives us 8.9. So instead of 89 tenths, we should have right here 8.9. So we have 8.9 times negative 3.16. 8.9 times negative 3.16, negative 28.124. So let's smudge out those numbers and replace them with what they solved for. Not the plus sign though, keep that plus sign there. Negative 28.124. Then, so we finished all the multiplying. I don't see any more of that. I do see dividing, but remember, because these are on top of the fraction, it's kind of like there's parentheses here. Kind of like there's parentheses. So let's add. I also, while we're here, don't see any subtracting. So let's add these numbers since they're both on top of the fraction together. Negative 28.124 plus negative 1.9 is negative 30.024. So let's smudge out these numbers and replace them with what we solved for. So smudge out the numbers I just used and the operations I just used and replace them with what I just solved for, negative 30.024. So now we have the math sentence. I'm going to write this in a different way. Negative 30.024 divided by 10 on top of 11. Now, when we are dividing with fractions, like when you have a number divided by a fraction, there's something really awesome you can do to make it not dividing anymore. That super awesome thing is called keep, change, flip. When using this strategy, using the keep, change, flip strategy to divide with fractions, you keep the first number exactly the same, so negative 30.024. You change the divide sign to a times sign, and then you flip that fraction. Flip, where the denominator comes the numerator, and the numerator becomes the denominator. Now, let's turn this fraction into a decimal. We did keep, change, flip because 10 divided by 11, 10 elevenths gives us a repeating decimal, which is gross. But if we multiply by the opposite, 11 divided by 10, now we don't have a repeating decimal anymore. Now it's only nice things, 1.1. So 11 tenths we can turn into a decimal by doing top number divided by bottom number, which is 1.1. So another way to write this is negative 30.024 times 1.1. Let's see what that is. Scooch this. There we go. Now they both will fit. Negative 30.024 times 1.1 is negative 33.0264. Our final answer, negative 33.0264. Negative 33.0264. Check. And correct. Then I click Finish, Attempt, Submit All and Finish, Submit All and Finish again, and we're done. If you need more help with this homework, please let me know. I'd love to help. Good luck and goodbye.